Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. Really excited to be here at ADC to talk about plugin GUIs, but specifically how we can speed up UI development and overcome some pain points that I imagine we've all felt if we've worked through building plugins and apps. Quick little about me. For the past 20 years, I've been worked in product design, product management, and QA, 13 at Avid, 7 at Universal Audio. I worked on dozens of plugins and DAW features over that time. Today I'm at Pace, where I run program management and manage the QA and support teams. And also on the side, I've got my own company Storyboard where I'm working on plugins and audio apps. And a lot of that came from that need, along with a history of building products. So here's the challenge. Can we remove the error-prone step of translating UIs into code and instead give designers like more direct control over what ships? And for years, I've seen designers hand off beautiful creations in their mockups and design tools, and developers have to spend weeks or months trying to rebuild them in our plugin. And that's just overhead. It slows us down, costs us extra money, and ultimately it waters down the vision as we have to cut scope and features to make a date. And so why does this happen, and why is this process so lossy? And when I say lossy, it's the same thing I mean in audio. Like, information is stripped out. The design start as high fidelity, expressive creations in the design tools, but as we're forced to implement them through PNGs or SVGs and coordinate maps, or try to hand code layout rules, a lot can get lost. Gradients don't match, motion stripped out, responsiveness gets more hacked in, and designers lose trust of what they build is actually what the users are going to see. And that ultimately slows down creativity to try new things. And I'm sure many of you have experienced this, and it's important to say, I don't think it's due to lack of skill or effort on the developer or designer side. It's that the process itself tends to just be lossy. So can we create a designer-centric workflow to try to overcome this? And I think we can. And I'm going to walk you through how I've personally been able to overcome this. The solution comes from combining three things. We've got JUCE 8 brings us a new web view, which are extremely helpful. And we hook that up through modern frameworks like React and Vite to give us a little bit more ease of development, and design tools like Rive or Spline. And you may not know Rive or Spline yet. That's okay. Think of them as more like next generation design tools. They're all web-based. They have collaboration built in, and they're built really around interactive design with 2D, 3D objects. They have state machines, do animation, and even have physics engines, because they get used in gaming. And all of it works in real time. And the evolution here is that instead of taking the designs and flattening them out, exporting them, or relying on third-party hacks or plugins to get them out of your design tool, we're going to load those files directly from uh, the, Spline or Rive into our web view. And it communicates over the JavaScript bridge, and we use the native support that each tool gives us for JavaScript React. And this ultimately lets the designers stay in control of the behavior, and while the developers can focus on solid parameter and other infrastructure. It's the same separation concerns we see with web development. Designers build out the front end, and engineers can focus on the back end. And it seems like plugins should be able to work that way too. This is a short session, and I'm going to give you some key details on what I think you need to know to where you can get started. If there's interest later, I can maybe make some videos, but for today, I'm really going to focus on how the pieces connect and why this workflow kind of becomes a really big shift, and how we build plugins and app UIs. Both tools are free. They do have paid plans, but it should be pretty easy for folks to get started and access these things. So to get started, first, JUCE WebView gives us a really solid foundation. And there's a really great tutorial that you may or may not know about by Jan Wilczek. Said that right? And it's a great place to start. Definitely go clone the repo and go through the YouTube videos. This is what I did to get started. It really lays out how it all works together. And the fact that it has like a C++ and JavaScript side by side in the app, for me, was really, really helpful in getting on board with that, but also debugging little idiosyncrasies about the web view. It doesn't use React or Vite, but that's fine. It really is there to teach you the core concepts. And there you can start handling any sort of special cases yourself, keyboard focus, the shortcut keys you want to add, and keep an eye on automation and gestures, things like that, as some DAWs can react a little differently. A good handle on how the gestures and parameters work is going to be really important as you start to integrate Rive or Spline into your workflow. Um, uh, and it's really important to note that both Rive and Spline provide JavaScript and React support, but there are many others. So if there's some other method that you personally want to look into, definitely check it out, as it's not just one way to go. So let's start from there. We want to get into Rive, and I want to make sure you understand this. Rive is really where things get fun. It's a design tool, and it's really built around animation activity. You expose artboards, which have now been renamed to components, and other elements which you bind to JUCE parameters. And two key elements of this is the view model data binding feature they have and the state machine. So in React, you load up an artboard, you bind the JUCE parameters to your data model instances, and everything can behave in real time for what you design inside of the product. And I'm going to kind of go into here's a kind of a view of Rive, just so you get a sense of what it is. It looks more like what you would expect from a design product, layers, and state machine, all the time of different parameters. So definitely check it out there. But let's talk about how you actually get it integrated. And this is how we connect to JUCE. We need to build out view models and have data bindings within them. And if you see here, you probably notice that these are all things that you would normally want to have with your main types of connections into your JUCE plugin: toggle parameters, sliders, meters, and combo boxes. And all of this then creates a direct communication between JUCE and the plugin. So you can manage state back and forth and listen or receive, listen and transmit updates to those states, and then have them show nicely in your UI. To build upon this, you'll want to, for your designer, you'll want to eventually export some definitions so they know how to actually connect them up. And I'll show you how that works here in a second. But what I found creating a CSV file that you can automate export from your build system or your code gives a nice foundation so that they can go into Rive and actually hook all those things up. And that kind of looks like this. Essentially, you take a slider parameter, which is a slider view model, and we're going to go through and we're going to get the LFO speed parameter hooked up here. So we're going to create an instance. We're going to then take a view model of plugin controls and nest that under the LFO, nests under the plugin control view model. And then we bind the LFO speed to that. That may sound a little complicated, and it can be, but ultimately, if you go through it a few times, it actually makes a lot of sense and makes the workflow really repeatable as you have lots of parameters. And then ultimately, now that we have an LFO speed slider parameter, we can connect that to whatever we want in our design. And in this case, I've got a slider parameter plugin, which is in the plugin controls LFO speed path. And I've also got a knob map that's converting it from whatever range it's there right now to a normalized value that I can then safely transmit over to JUCE. The state machine. So data mining connects the parameters to the visuals, but the real power also then comes into how Rive state machine works. This lets users manage the context and the UI logic without writing extra code. So think about a slider. You don't just want to move the knob. You want to hover state. You want to click state. You maybe even want some animation, depending on how when you let go of it or anything else. And the state machine handles all that declaratively. So we don't have to hand code different states or introduce add more complexity to add animation or things like that. The designers can just work with the view models and data binding that we already have set up to experiment and find new ways to build cool interactions. And that's really what makes this really so excited. It isn't just flat things that we're exporting. It's new ways to really encode behavior and interactivity right alongside the design. Now, Rive's great. We just went through that, but let's go move over to Spline. And Spline is cool because it brings in a 3D element to that. You can design knobs, switches, even a whole 3D environment and connect those up to parameters. And here's a screenshot of it. There's a really cool OP1 I found within the community there. We'll talk about the community in a second. And some very impressive things that this product can also do. Similar to how we have our view model and data bindings, this actually uses a similar but different approach. It uses a variable system. So we do still declare, in this case, output gain position, so we know where our fader is, if it's a fader for a parameter. We then take that and we bind that to any state or value in the system. And then we can create events. In this case, we have a drag and drop event that grabs a circle and then has a limited range and then sets that variable back. And you can also add formulas in there to, again, get normalized values out of the system as well, if you want to clean it up that way and not do it in your React code. And I think there's also some really other cool things that come through the system because we're not overcomplicating and causing a lot of churn on our C++ side, and we're using a system that's stable and used by I imagine thousands and thousands of people already, we have a more stable separation with our view model separation. We also get smaller file sizes out of this. Again, we're not exporting, like bringing Chromium or anything along with this. When we use the JUCE web views, it's just the native OS web technology that's embedded in there. And then we have really small file sizes. If it's a vector, it's probably under a meg. And if it's, rasters and things like that, it does a really good job of keeping things at the right resolution and not bloating your plugin, which you've dealt with, having to deal with resizability and Retina support that can get pretty big. And again, that gives us resolution independent scaling. So your plugin, you now have that built in, and you can work that through your design because the plugin can be aware, or the design can be aware of your artboard size, which is pretty cool. Here's some YouTube links and documentation for all of these. Rive has even a really great AI chatbot that, I've gotten stuck, been able to put my React code in there, and it sorted me out. I think this is all really, kind of accessible to folks. So definitely don't try to get in there. There's a bunch of great videos. There's also excellent communities where people are sharing designs, as some of the ones that I showed already. And there's very active development. Even some of the things that I'm showing here have only really been out for a couple months on the set. So, I also wanted to bring up that there's, I'm showing kind of a main hosting the artboard and giving most of the control to the designer, but there's a lot of flexibility that developers have too in leveraging this, where you can take components and lay them out. So definitely check the documentation to see how you might want to integrate this into your workflow if it's interesting. And so to wrap this up, I'm really excited about a workflow like this. I think it really empowers designers, takes, I think a burden off of developers that I don't think is fair. And I think it potentially gets us to push the boundaries of what UI and user experience can be. I hope to take some time to investigate the tools and see what new experiences you can create. I got my links in here, and you'll be able to see the presentation slides later.